1. So with that, let's call the meeting to order. Just a roll call, please.
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Ebbinger.
Here.
Mr. Strand.
Mr. Strand is here, but he's just sent a note.
Okay,
He's having audio issues.
thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mrs. Sherling.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Wonderful. We have a quorum. Thank you, everyone. And Mr. Paulson, let's jump into Mayor Judge.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Mr. Shockley, would you like to give us a few words and an update on Mayor Judd?
Yeah, thank you, Joel. Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Diversion Authority Board, Mayor Judd and Chairman Judd, as you may know, was recently nominated and appointed to serve as a judge in the district court in Minnesota. He'll be located out of Fergus Falls. That's where his chambers will be. As part of the process, once you're appointed as a judge, you have to maintain the appearance of impartiality. And as a result, through recommendations of the Judicial Board and myself, Mayor Judd is winding down his public activities regarding service on different governing boards, and thus he won't be chairing today's meeting. And as a result of the JPA, that falls to the Vice Chair to chair this meeting. The JPA covers what happens next, so the JPA will provide that once the City of Moorhead selects its mayor, the mayor will then serve as the chair of the Diversion Authority Board. We anticipate that the City of Moorhead would be selecting their mayor within the next month. It's a process of selection from their existing City Council members, and so it'll ultimately be up to the Moorhead City Council, but at the end of the month, we would expect that they'll have a mayor, and pursuant to the JPA, the mayor of Moorhead would then serve as the chair of the Diversion Authority. So in the short term, the JPA contemplated that these circumstances could happen from time to time, and the vice chair will be taking over the duties of the chair until Moorhead has an opportunity to appoint a new mayor. And I think on behalf of us all, we can wish Mayor Judd good luck in his future career. And I think he'll do very well as a judge.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Stole my thunder. I've already texted. I'm sure most of us have. If not, do so. He's a heck of a guy. A good friend of mine, has been since way back when. So yeah, I'm just tickled pink. My friend has moved on to, I don't know, bigger and better things, maybe different things, and we'll see how it all works out for him. But we probably all know a judge or two in our life, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But I'm just as happy as I can be. So, board members, here we go. And with this next item on our agenda, we have a chance to approve the prior meeting minutes. Presume you've all had a chance to review them. If so, look for a motion to approve or amend, please.
Steen moves to approve.
Is there a
Dardis second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion on the motion? If not, voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 3 on our agenda is approval of the order of the agenda. Mr. Paulson, you and I spoke prior, and could you give me a friendly reminder as to which items we want to remove on our agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 5B was tabled at Finance, so no need to consider that today. In item number 10A was also additional consideration at Lands Committee and Finance Committee hopefully will be coming before the board next month. So that can also be removed from the agenda.
Wonderful. Board members, with that, I'd look for a motion to approve this agenda as amended, please.
Steen moves to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Campbell.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is our consent agenda. We have IA, B, and C. Look for a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
Strand moves approval.
Is there a second, please?
Sherling, second.
Second.
Thank you both. Moved and seconded the consent agenda to be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Dardis,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Aye.
Mr. Emminger,
Aye.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Motion passes. On to our regular agenda, item 4, which is our executive director report. Mr. Paulson, you ready to go? I see your screen sharing, so you must be.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just a few updates for the board from January here. I did give testimony to the North Dakota State Legislature about 2 weeks ago. The testimony was surrounding our financial ask of the legislature this year. It was received very well. I had some follow-up questions that I did provide to the committee, Appropriations Committee, and have not heard anything else since then. After the testimony, the House did introduce a bonding bill. Within that bonding bill, the Diversion Authority would be given the opportunity to access state bonding dollars up to a maximum state intent of $850 million. So that's very good. We certainly support that. That brings a lot of the state grant cash forward, really reduces our short-term financing costs during construction by about $20 million. It also would remove us from the Resources Trust Fund, which would certainly free up those dollars for other water projects across the state of North Dakota. So there's certainly a lot of state benefit to this arrangement as well, and we'll continue to monitor that as it progresses through the House, and we begin to have discussions at the committees. We also had a pretty large milestone for the project on January 15th. We released the final RFP to the joint venture development teams. This is our last turnaround, and now it's wait for the receipt of the technical proposals and the financial proposals. So that's a pretty exciting day for us. A lot of work went into getting that out. It is the first RFP of its kind in the nation related to a split delivery public-private partnership project. So we did create history on January 15th with the release of that RFP. Mr. Shockley will talk more about the WIFI term sheet, but we did get approval from US EPA on the term sheet, and the dollars were allocated for our WIFI loan. So that was a very exciting notification for us, and John will dig into that a little bit more in a few minutes. And then we also received word last week, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers work plan was released, and there was $115 million appropriated to the Diversion Authority program in the federal work plan for 2021. That is a record number for our program. from an annual funding standpoint, and certainly something to celebrate. And we're continuing to work with the Corps of Engineers to keep the projects on schedule and get some additional works, different additional projects off the ground this summer coming up. So, with that, I'll take any questions if there are any related to our current events.
Board members, if you have
Mr. Chair-
questions, please just raise your hand and I'll do my best to call on you. Who's up?
Mr. Chair, this is Dave Pepcorn. I'm on the phone.
Commissioner Pepcorn, please.
Yeah, Joel, my question is, so the P3, the final went out January 15th. When will that return to us, and when will that be available?
Great question, Commissioner Pepcorn. So we currently have a March 26th financial proposal receipt date. So March 26th, we will be receiving the financial proposals. We do anticipate that we will need a few days to review those and to basically compare them to our financial plan. But we should be able to publicly release, the bid amounts, or at least we're going to know on March 26th, whether it fits within our financial plan. Mr. Shockley can get into the detail, but we have a very described or prescribed procedure for reviewing those. We're currently setting up our review teams, both from the technical side and the financial side. Those review teams review the information, ultimately make recommendation to the executive director, who then in turns makes recommendation for award of the bid to the Diversion Authority Board. So we do have some due diligence that needs to occur on and after March 26th. But I can assure you we will try to get that information turned around as quick as possible and make that available to board members as soon as is practical.
Great, thank you.
Board members, I don't see any other hands up. Any further questions? Mr. Paulson, anything further to add?
No, that is all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Outstanding. With that, we'll move on to item number 5, our council update. Mr. Shockley, you were on previously. Item 5A, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Diversion Authority Board. It's my pleasure to let you know that on January 15th, the Office of Management and Budget and also the EPA Administrator signed off on the WIFI term sheet for a WIFI loan. You may ask, why is that important? That is essentially, if you compare it to a mortgage, it's you've been fully approved for a mortgage. OMB has set aside the $569 million of principal and approved the credit subsidy. All we need to do is close. As Joel had mentioned regarding the proposals that are due sometime in March or April, we have to wait till after we have those in and it's awarded by the board, and then we can close on the WIFI loan. So that it's a pretty big milestone. When I say just close, there's a lot of mechanical nuts and bolts issues that have to happen before closing, just like with any major undertaking of financing. And we have a kind of a little group that meets every couple weeks, and like with Mike Montplaisir and Kent Costin and a couple others, and we just kind of go over what the different steps are in getting to the financial close of all the diversion financing. But it's a big step for the Diversion Authority. The interest rate is 1 basis point above the U.S. Treasury. That will float a little bit between now and closing, but we're currently estimating an interest rate of between 1.6% interest to 1.9% interest, depending upon the what the treasuries are on the day that we close. As I've indicated before, the nice part about the WIFI loan is the interest rate that is used on the WIFI loan is the date that you close. And so since we're closing in a low interest rate environment, we are taking advantage of very, very low cost interest. And that is good for the term of the loan, which when you add the construction period and then the deferral period, it's a little bit more than 40 years, with the last payment landing in 2062. So I can certainly answer any questions. I did not put the entire term sheet in the packet because I didn't want to overwhelm the packet. But
Commissioners or board members, any questions for Mr. Shockley? I don't see any hands, but doesn't always mean there's no questions. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, we should probably have the board just formally approve the term sheet.
Fair enough. Board members, what are your wishes?
Mahoney, move to approve.
Is there a
Steen,
second,
second.
please? Thank you both. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, we'll scan for hands. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Ebbinger,
Aye.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Shockley, anything further, or board members, any questions for Mr. Shockley? If not, we have removed item 5B. We'll move on to item 6. Is Miss Williams? I thought I saw Terry on.
Hi, Mr. Peterson. I'm
Hey
here.
there. You have the floor.
All right.
Educate us, please.
Absolutely. My pleasure. The monthly update for January from the Corps of Engineers. The big news, of course, as Joel mentioned, is that the work plan for FY21 was issued and Fargo-Moorhead received $115 million. I think it's pretty important to remember that back in 2016, that was our first construction appropriation for this project, and it was $5 million, so we've come a long way. On to the monthly update. Items number 1 and 2, the diversion inlet and the wild rice. Physical work was shut down on 18 December for a while. They might start back up again mid-February, dependent on weather, and it would likely be driving some pile at the diversion inlet structure. Down to number 3, the Red River structure design. That remains on schedule. We got the next step is a 95% review in April with final plans and specs scheduled to be completed late August. Great progress being made by that team and keeping on schedule. Number 4, Southern Embankment, Reach SC1, otherwise known as the Western Tieback. We advertised that for bids on 15 January, and those bids are currently due on the 17th of February, so we hope to award a contract for that within the coming months. Number 5, getting more into detailed design here, that's Reach SC1B. We started design up of that. There's a map on the back of this as usual, and that's the piece that will tie into the southern embankment at the diversion inlet structure. Yeah, right there. Thank you. Number 6, Reach SC2A and 2B. That's the camel hump area. We're detailed design there, 65% on 2A, and then we're starting design of 2B. So in about a year, we'll have completed the entire design of that camel hump area, the dam portion. On to number 7, I-29 Rays. We do have plans and specs complete on that. We pre-qualified bidders, and advertisement of that for bids is currently on hold. We've got some ongoing discussions on funding with respect to that I-29 Rays. Number 8, Drain 27 Wetlands. We're on schedule there as well to have an award of that contract the end of September. And then number 9, that's a new item added, Drayton Dam Mitigation Project. Most of you remember we started design of that quite a while ago and then put it on the shelf. We're picking that up again. We need to have final plans and specs done the same time that the Red River structure is done to meet permit conditions from the state of Minnesota. What that project is replacing the existing dam to incorporate fish passage. And we did do an environmental assessment on that back in 2013. So with that, Mr. Peterson, if there's any questions.
Board members, any questions? I don't, again, see any hands up, but just verifying. Any questions? If not, Terry, anything further?
No, thank you, sir.
Ms. Williams, I appreciate your time. On to item 7, public outreach. Thought I saw Mr. Olson on, but
Mr. Olson's here.
outstanding. You have the comm, sir.
All right, thank you. We had our Diversion Authority public outreach meeting yesterday, and our communications director, Jennifer Darling, presented at the meeting, and I'm going to ask her to just give a quick overview of some of the things that she talked about at our meeting. Jennifer?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Olson. So you'll find a full version of the communications approach in your packet. So what you'll notice is that I'm calling it an approach, just because in this first initial time that I'm here, I didn't want to bring in a full-blown plan without being able to take a view of the landscape a little bit first and understanding where we're at with the project in this phase that we're at now and going forward. So what you'll see is what I built this approach on is 3 different phases. So the first is the success phase, where we're at now with getting through this successful process of the funding that we need to get into the next phase of the construction of the project. Then the build phase, which is the most crucial of the project and the most communication needs to happen. And that is where I will begin to put together a more detailed plan that I'll share in upcoming meetings that puts a little bit more emphasis on a crisis communications plan and a media plan and safety and all of the things that we need to be aware of during that construction phase and public outreach. So the purpose of that is just to do a little bit more listening from all sides that are involved during that process and ensuring that we're not only addressing the expectations that we have during that time, but also just enabling the performance so we can stay on track and meet our expectations for deadlines. And then something that I've heard through this project is getting to the end of construction, but there is another phase after that for the delivery. So once this is turned over into that operation and maintenance phase, we want to make sure that there is a solid communications plan in place. So in that operation and maintenance phase, no matter who carries that forward, they have the structure that they need for interacting with the public and who is doing the operation and maintenance, and ensure that there's a solid communications plan in place there as well. So that's the approach that I'm looking at and building the plan out further from this approach, and happy to answer any questions that anyone might have on that.
Board members, any questions? Any questions? If not, appreciate your time. Obviously, communications, I think, can be improved every time we talk to people, and I think we can do a better job than we've done. So I'm grateful for your time, grateful for the opportunity to have you on the team, and I hope we can push forward in a extremely positive way. Anything further to add?
No, thank you so much. I'm actually really excited to hear that, because I'm happy to be a part of this team and look forward to all the ways that we can enhance communications and make this project as successful as possible going forward. So thank you so much.
Outstanding. Thank you. 7B, Mr. Olson, you want to keep on these, or how do you want to approach this, sir?
I'm sorry, Chad, 7B, what's the heading? I don't have my,
Education sessions, and then DA information points is item C.
I can share a little bit of details on that if needed.
I'd say go for it.
Okay. So the education sessions are something that I've been working on to provide some additional information through the legislative session and beyond. But in the meantime, it'll move to that 7C, the information points. So look more for the education sessions coming up. But in the meantime, there's the information points that are in your packet. The purpose of that is just to give a really good overview of the project, where we're at in general, the numbers, the information that you might get some frequently asked questions. So we're all on the same page. We have the same information that we're sharing. There should be hopefully no questions, but if you do have any questions or feedback on what we could continue to add to those information points, please reach out to me anytime so we can keep those up to date and make sure that we're sharing all of the information needed.
Wonderful.
Is there a question? I think I saw a hand raised.
Yes.
Yep.
Commissioner
Oh,
Peterson, this is
there-
Peggy Harder. I
see
do
you. Thank
believe
you.
we were looking for action on item 7A to give Jennifer the go-ahead to use that overall communication approach as her basis of building out the communications plan.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Paulson, anything to add to item 7A regarding communication?
Well, I'd just like to add, this was done in conjunction with the executive director goals for the program. Focusing on implementing this project on schedule, on budget, and providing permanent, reliable flood protection. And also, a secondary goal of ours is to really create a lasting organization for the FMDA during construction, but ultimately setting the stage for an effective management organization during operation and maintenance as well. And so Jennifer's taken that, taken my goals and infused them into this communication approach. No doubt as we develop this more in conjunction and partnership with the outreach committee, it's going to be pretty exciting to see this develop and take hold. Just want to make one note on the education sessions. The board may recall we have sessions for the board as we move into accepting bids and going through the process of reviewing and ultimately awarding and signing the agreement with the winning proposer. There's certain, I believe, items that the board should be aware of as we go through that process, just so everyone is on the same page and understands the due diligence, the risks, and why we're taking the procedural approach that we are. So I would like to at some point make those educational sessions available to the board. It may not be the best format to do them during the actual meeting, but my thought right now is, we would put these together and make available for board members to access at their leisure, and also, make ourselves available for any questions, follow-up, or additional information that any board member may choose or ask related to the education session. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Commissioner Campbell, you have a question?
Yeah, no question. Just a comment. Jennifer gave us a little bit more detailed report yesterday on this approach, and it was a public outreach recommendation, I think, to approve that and move forward with it. So I would move on item number 7A for approval.
Is there a second, please?
Ebinger, second.
Carlson, second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Shirley, I noticed you had your hand up. Is that prudent to ask your discussion point now, or were you on a hold?
No, I have a question. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for putting those informational points together. Really appreciate those. I assume it's a, it's a living document, and I think it's really, really helpful for board members to, have an up-to-date report that they can refer to when they need to. My question would be on the educational point you have here. Who is the audience there? Is it the? I'm not sure I understand that. Is that for new board members?
I think
what is that?
Commissioner, the intent is to educate us, I believe. Mr. Paulson, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Sherling. And they're really focused on the nature of the P3 procurement and the relationship between the diversion authority and the selected developer, and how construction will be monitored, how compliance will occur, and ultimately what our responsibilities to the agreement are and what the developer's responsibilities are and where that risk transfer comes into play. And so it's because the public-private partnership procurement mechanism is very different than traditional contracting mechanisms. There's some unique points that the owner needs to be aware of and keep in the back of their mind in discussions or in meetings with the P3 development team. So it's really just ensuring that we're providing all of the necessary resources so that our board members can be as prepared and understanding of the arrangement as possible.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherling. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, let's do a roll call on this too, please. Voice vote.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes. Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Papcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Ebbinger.
Aye.
Mr. Strand.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Paulson, communication team, anything further on item 7?
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Outstanding. With that, we'll move on to item 8. Commissioner Sherling, you want to tackle this one?
Sure, thank you. Land management met yesterday, and we are working hard to keep up with the Corps and get everything acquired. And I understand that we are on time and on budget at this point. So we have completed acquisitions for the diversion channel, the Southern Embankment Reach 1, the I-29 road raise, the Wild Rice River control structure, and the inlet structure. The Cass County Commission has held 10 public meetings since our last gathering with property owners and authorized the joint board to utilize last resort eminent domain on those parcels. We've acquired property interests on nearly 600 parcels, including those acquired with the last resort eminent domain and the split parcels. Appraisal work is being completed for Drain 27 Wetland Restoration Project, river control structure, the environmental monitoring easements, the upstream structures, and we've started flowage easement valuation on over 500 parcels with tillable land in the upstream mitigation area. 2021 farmland lease agreements are being executed with appropriate planting restrictions. And then, as you saw, as we discussed earlier, we are working diligently on a policy regarding the disposition and management of excess lands. We hope to have that before this board next month. And that concludes my report. There are wonderful graphs and maps in your meeting agenda, so you can refer to those if you want more details. And I would
Thank you.
take any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions for Commissioner Sherling? I see Commissioner Campbell, your hand's still up. Is that from before, or do you have a new question, sir?
I have no other questions. I don't see my hand up. Okay, I'll move it.
Okay.
There
Awesome.
we go.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sherling, your hand's still up too, but I imagine you're not
Okay,
asking
well, and
questions
I
of
would
yourself.
I would just invite Roger Olson from the Cast Joint Board and or Kevin Campbell or whoever is speaking for the Minnesota acquisition side to chime in and give a report as well if they'd like.
All right, team, you've been called out. Any commentary?
This is Kevin. I guess I can start with the MCC JPA. We met today. We did have a couple of, or we had 3 appraisals presented to us for approval, and all 3 were approved. There's still more to come on those, but on the actual acquisition costs, and then there was some discussion on easements and some needs for property pin locations and things like that. So we're going to be working with A2S and to get all of that stuff that's needed. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
And this is Cass County. This is Cass County Joint Board. We just continue to close on properties. Again, you heard Commissioner Sherling tell us that there was about 600 properties that have been acquired, and a statistic that we received today was there is about 700 flowage easement properties that we need to acquire. So there's a pretty big effort going forward yet. And we approved a letter today to go out to those people in the staging area that we need to acquire those flowage easements, and that will be going out to notify them some information about going forward and what's going to happen. So we just continue to have our land agents and talk to landowners and continue to negotiate for property rights. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. I also see team members like Mr. Dodds. Now would be your time to speak, my friend. If you have anything, and if you don't, that's okay too. But just giving you an opportunity if you so choose, sir.
Thanks. I think Mary and Roger and Kevin did a fantastic job. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are, but they're doing well.
Okay. Board members, any questions regarding what we've been discussing? If not, let's move on to item number 9, finance. Mayor Dardis, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. We had a lengthy finance meeting yesterday. We had a lot of things to talk about. The board approval contracts, as you see, is in front of us. We broke out one item, item number 1, which is the Oracle amendment, the Academics, and that was for an amendment of $800,000. And we had a lot of discussion about that. That was approved and moved forward. And that amendment is that it's based basically on the continued raising of the entire project's cost. And Mr. Shockley, Mr. Paulson, and others did a good job of negotiating that down to the rate that we did get. But that was approved by the Finance Committee and moved forward. There were items 1 through 6 with regarding to the contracting actions. As you see, all of them were approved. One that did garner a lot of discussion was item number 6, the Ide Bailey and the new services agreement. One of the Finance Committee members felt very strongly that going forward in the future that an RFP should be sent out with regard to auditing services. So that discussion has taken place and was noted by Mr. Paulson and the like. I don't know if you'd care for me to go through any of these line items. the demo package, the awarded contract to industrial builders was substantially less than any of the others by a great deal. And we were informed that the industrial builders as part of their bid package, they're going to, rather than demolish some of the buildings that are involved in there, they actually have someone that wants to buy the buildings and move them. So some of the other bids were well over $1 million, approaching $2 million. So that was a great savings and a very positive thing for the Diversion Authority. The new services agreement is government relations. That's the GA group. That's a lobbying group out of the Bismarck area that is going to be monitoring all those types of legislation coming forward that affects the Diversion Authority and or the whole process. And so that was also approved. And then that's basically for all of the approval contracts there, Mr. Chairman. We also had the Executive Director, Mr. Paulson, approve contract actions. He had a number of them that through his purview that was taken care of. And you can see we also had a presentation by Mr. Shockley on the WIFI term sheet. I would like to extend a congratulations to Mr. Shockley, Mr. Costin, Mr. Montplaisir, and anybody else that was involved in those and developing not only the interest rates and the negotiations that took place, but certainly some of the terms also. Sometimes it's just a quick line item and we don't appreciate the significance of the impact that it has on their work that they've done on that WIFI, because basically it's above a lot of our pay grades. So they do a wonderful job. We also had two memorandums of understanding, both at the City of West Fargo and the Magellan Pipeline. The City of West Fargo MOU did not garner a lot of conversation. It's very basic, very boilerplate type thing that Mr. Shockley presented. The Magellan Pipeline is a different thing because of the dollar amount, and a lot of questions were raised as to whether we have any ability to negotiate what that might be. I believe that the number was $385,000 for that. Basically, that's all I have. Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, we'd stand to answer those. There was one other major discussion, actually two. One of the questions were that the interest that we are accumulating on our reserves, where does that interest money go? And that is reinvested back into the Diversion Authority account. And I thank Mr. Barthel for doing that research and finding it, as Mr. Costin was not available yesterday in the meeting. One of the other main items that we talked about for the future and going forward, with all the things that are going to be transpiring with the as this is in progress and spending money, we ask that we start to track all the very large amendments, say for example the Oracle, and what effect this is going to have on our 2021 budget. So we'll be having conversations through Mr. Paulson with Mr. Costin, Mr. Montplaisir, the gentlemen that lead that effort for us, and trying to develop a spreadsheet as to some of those much larger amendments and how they may affect the budget going forward. Mr. Chairman, I have that. That's all I have, and I'd stand for any questions.
Mayor Dardis, thank you. Mayor Mahoney, you have a question, sir.
Mayor Dardis, did you do an RFP on the GA group as far as the lobbying group? Was there an RFP done on that?
No, sir. The Finance Committee was not involved in an RFP for the GA group. Again, that's the lobbying group from Bismarck. That was a decision made by Mr. Paulson.
Could be concerned. One is the rate in which you've gotten is almost double what the city of Fargo pays for a lobbyist for all of the legislative issues, and this is one single issue. I've heard in the past the rate was 30 to 40,000. Is there a reason why we went up in rates?
I'd have to stand to the question to Mr. Paulson. I will note that in the contract, in reviewing the contract, and there's a number of us from the Finance Committee that did review the contract, that we can terminate that at a very short notice if the Diversion Authority and or Mr. Paulson deem that appropriate. Questions on the GA group, I will have to defer to Mr. Paulson.
Yeah. Mr. Paulson, you and I spoke about this previously. You want to share some of those conversations, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. So we developed the service agreement prior to the legislative session. We all understand how important it is to fulfill our funding plan this biennium. If we are not successful, we need to move things and defer in-town projects and mitigation through flow easement options upstream. So certainly not ideal. And so the importance of rounding out our financial plan and having that prepared along with getting our our P3 agreement signed and moving forward with construction, and how all those things kind of play together really required us to take a very robust strategic look at how we would interact with the North Dakota legislature during this session. We defined and negotiated a service scope with GA Group that the team felt was appropriate. And it turns out, as we've now moved through about a month of the legislative session, we are certainly not utilizing GA Group to the extent that we thought they would. So this is a time and materials contract, as Mayor Dardis had indicated. There is a clause for our removing the contract at any point. They're really there as needed, in providing the daily tracking of bills, indicating any concern with any language in a bill pertaining to the Diversion Authority, and then assisting us in scheduling and setting up in-person meetings with legislators as needed and as necessary. So even though the budget's at 60,000, it already moving through the legislative session, I can tell you, the actual expenditure is going to be significantly below that.
The time and expenses explains it, Joel. Thank you. That's really what I needed. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Sherling?
Thank you. Just curious, Joel, we still have the Minnesota lobbying group working with us, and how does this compare to that contract?
That's a great question, Commissioner Sherling. So we did not review the Frederickson and Byron lobbying agreement for 2021. I did have extensive discussions with Mayor Judd and Lisa Bodie, who is the legislative lead for the city of Moorhead. She is city staff, and they use Frederickson and Byron as well. Looking at the landscape of the Minnesota legislature, it really didn't make sense to continue to have two contracts with Frederickson and Byron. City of Moorhead is taking somewhat of a lead on the discussions with the Minnesota legislature as far as the Minnesota funding component as conceived in our financial plan is concerned. So we really, the city of Moorhead has wrapped into and will assume the primary contact with Frederickson and Byron, and will utilize them for the benefit of the Diversion Authority as needed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the financial report.
Is there a second, please?
Mahoney, second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mayor Dardis.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Ebinger,
Aye.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Motion passes. Anything further under finance, Mayor Dardis?
No, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Item 10, other business. We've removed 10A, but that does not preclude us from other business. Mr. Paulson or board members, anything else for other business?
No, sir, I do not have anything else.
Okay, with that, we can move on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Kevin. I just wanted to know if John Shockley could give us that date again in 2063 when this will be done. I'd kind of like to be there to celebrate that.
It's November 1st of 2062.
62.
Well,
Okay,
I hope we
got
see
it.
you all there.
It'll be great. We'll have a beer.
That's when everything will be paid off. So.
Hopefully we elect people and put them in the seats that we sit in now that pay this thing off a heck of a lot sooner based on our return, but that's a discussion for a different day. Anything else for other business? If not, our next meeting is February 25th, 2021. Look for item 12, please.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Campbell.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the team. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.